Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. Israeli fighter jets have launched air raids on the Gaza Strip for the second time after violating a ceasefire. The Israel Defense Forces alleged the attacks were in response to incendiary balloons launched from the enclave. Meanwhile, a Hamas spokesperson says the bombing is a demonstrative show by the new Israeli government. Iranians are voting in the presidential election on Friday. Hardline Judiciary Chief Ibrahim Raisi and moderate former Central Bank Governor Abdul Nasser Hemati are the main contenders. North Korea says it needs to prepare for both dialogue and confrontation with the US, particularly the latter. State media says Kim Jong-un presented an analysis of the Biden administration's North Korea policy at a plenary of the ruling party. Kim also laid out a strategic and tactical plan to deal with Washington. Brazil has registered more than 2,000 deaths from COVID-19 and over 74,000 infections overnight. Pakistan's positivity rate has fallen under 2% as the country logged 39 fatalities and over 1,000 cases in the past 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.8 million lives and infected nearly 177 million people so far. Well, those were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now the news in detail. Israeli fighter jets have launched air raids on the Gaza Strip while leading the ceasefire yet again. The Israel Defense Forces alleged the attacks were in response to incendiary balloons launched from the enclave. The missiles hit sites belonging to resistance groups northwest of Gaza City and north of Beit Lahia. A civil administration building east of Jabalia in the north was also targeted. IDF also attacked an agriculture field east of the southern town of Khan Yunis. Hamas says the bombing is a demonstrative show by the new Israeli government. Spokesperson Fauzi Barhom vowed to continue defending the Palestinian people and land. No casualties were reported immediately in the aftermath of the raid. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke with Israeli Foreign Minister Yair Lapid. The State Department says they discussed the need to improve Israeli-Palestinian relations in practical ways. Iranians are voting to elect a new president today. The poll comes after 3 years of economic hardship under U.S. sanctions. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei urged the people to participate in the electoral process after casting his vote in Tehran. Hardline Judiciary Chief Ibrahim Raisi and moderate former Central Bank Governor Abdul Nasser Hemati are the main contenders. Raisi is a close ally of Khamenei and is favored to succeed the incumbent Hassan Rouhani. More than 59 million Iranians are eligible to vote. Official opinion polls suggest turnout could be as low as 44%, significantly lower than in past elections. The results are expected around midday on Saturday. The Pentagon says militant groups like Al-Qaeda could pose a threat from Afghanistan to the U.S. and its allies in 2 years. Chairman Joint Chief of Staff General Mark Milley said there is a medium risk at the moment as foreign troops continue to draw down. He told a congressional hearing that the risk would increase if there is a collapse of the government. In January, a UN report said there were around 500 Al-Qaeda fighters in Afghanistan, but the Taliban deny it. Russia's President Vladimir Putin says the withdrawal of the U.S. troops from Afghanistan is a very important issue for Moscow. In a meeting in Moscow, Putin said Afghanistan has a common border with Tajikistan, whereas Russia has its military base. He noted Tajikistan is also a member of the Russia-led military bloc Collective Security Treaty Organization. He said Moscow's approach towards regional countries would depend on the situation in Afghanistan. Putin confirmed that he has also discussed the withdrawal of U.S. troops with President Joe Biden in Geneva. In Pakistan, a soldier has been martyred in a terrorist attack near Turbut in southwestern Balochistan province. The military's media wing said an operation to nab the terrorist has been launched. It said such attacks backed by anti-state forces cannot sabotage hard-earned peace in Balochistan. The army said security forces are determined to neutralize their nefarious designs. North Korea says it needs to prepare for both dialogue and confrontation with the U.S., particularly the latter. Speaking at a meeting of senior leaders in Pyongyang, leader Kim Jong-un called for a sharp and prompt response to any developments. State media says Kim presented an analysis of the Biden administration's North Korea policy at the plenary. He pledged to protect Korea's dignity and interests, guaranteeing a peaceful environment. The North Korean leader also laid out a strategic and tactical plan to deal with Washington. Earlier this year, Pyongyang accused the U.S. of going back on its commitments and said it wouldn't engage in more talks. Brazil has registered more than 2,000 deaths from COVID-19 and over 74,000 infections overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.8 million lives and infected nearly 177 million people so far. More in this report. The vaccination supply glitches, skepticism, and new variants continue complicating the fight against COVID-19. The U.S. says it will finish allocating 80 million shots in the coming days, with shipments going out as soon as the countries are ready to receive them. England's Wales region is delaying further easing of restrictions for 4 weeks after seeing a spike in cases of the Delta variant first identified in India. Similarly, in Australia, New South Wales has made face masks mandatory on public transport in Sydney. Meanwhile, New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern received her first shot of the vaccine as the country steps up efforts to inoculate its population.
For me, we needed to get those frontline workers, but I also need to be a role model and just demonstrate that it's safe, that it's effective, and that it's really important that everyone's vaccinated when they have their opportunities. So it's about finding the right balance.
South Korea has announced to offer Pfizer dose to some 760,000 people who received the first dose of AstraZeneca due to shipment delays by COVAX. In Japan, corporate giants are joining national vaccination efforts as the government struggles to meet its inoculation targets. Meanwhile, Tokyo residents are concerned over the government's decision to ease the state of emergency in the capital and other areas.
It is so obvious that they are lifting the state of emergency only to hold the Tokyo Olympics. They cannot even hide that, and it makes me very frustrated. We worked so hard to bring down the COVID-19 cases, but what's the point if we invite people to come from overseas?
In India, nearly 1,600 people lost their lives to the virus and over 62,000 tested positive in the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, Nepal has significantly reduced infections after its worst outbreak, but is in desperate need of vaccines. In Pakistan, 39 more people have died of COVID-19, while just over 1,000 tested positive in the past 24 hours. The health ministry says the country's positivity rate has declined to 1.9%. The ministry said the death toll is approaching 22,000. It said out of over 946,000 cases, more than 888,000 people have recovered. There are nearly 36,000 active cases. Over 2,400 of them are critical. The ministry said the country has administered almost 12.5 million vaccine doses so far. The Tudor Antalya Diplomacy Forum is set to begin in Turkey on Friday. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi will be representing Pakistan at the forum. Qureshi will also participate in a panel discussion on regional cooperation in Asia. Many global issues and opportunities for regional peace will be discussed at the meeting. 12 heads of state, 43 foreign ministers, and representatives of international organizations are participating in the forum. The theme for this year is Innovative Diplomacy, New Era, New Approaches. The U.S. House of Representatives has introduced a bill to speed up the processing of special immigration visas for Afghan workers. The legislation is for the Afghans at risk of Taliban retribution because they worked for the U.S. The bill will raise the number of visas available for qualifying Afghans to 19,000. The 12-year-old program has been plagued by processing delays due to personnel shortages at the U.S. Embassy and other issues. The new bill would eliminate requirements seen as impeding the application process. In a statement, Democrat Jason Krause said it is time for the U.S. to honor its promises and protect its Afghan partners. Earlier, Washington said President Joe Biden and Tayyip Erdogan have agreed that Turkey will take a lead role in securing Kabul airport. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba says the time has come for Russia to withdraw from his country. He also welcomed what he called U.S. President Joe Biden's tough stance against Russia during the summit in Geneva. Kuleba said Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin's meeting showed that the U.S. is back on the global stage. In an interview, he said Moscow has no power of veto over Ukraine's accession to NATO. This comes only hours after the Kremlin warned Ukraine against joining NATO, calling the move a red line for Russia. The U.S. House of Representatives has backed the repeal of the 2002 authorization for the use of military force. The House voted 268 to 161 to revoke the permission it gave former President George W. Bush to invade Iraq 19 years ago. To be enacted, the measure passed must also be approved by the Senate and signed into law by President Joe Biden. The repeal will need 60 votes to get through the evenly divided 100-member Senate. Repeal advocates say they have high hopes of garnering the desired votes, but opponents worry the move will send a message that the U.S. is pulling back from the Middle East. Many countries have promised to help Lebanon's army amid a political and economic crisis. The U.S., Russia, China, as well as European powers and some Gulf states pledged support in a virtual meeting organized by France. Lebanese Army Chief Joseph Aoun said the nation faces dire consequences if military salaries continue to tumble. Speaking at the meeting, he said all state institutions will collapse, including the Lebanese armed forces, without help. Diplomats say not much was offered during the meeting. Although the majority of countries showed readiness to offer bilateral support in the future. Paris has so far failed to push Lebanon's politicians to form a new government that is vital to unlock foreign aid. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Nigeria, armed attackers have killed a police officer, abducted 5 teachers and more than 80 students. A teacher at the school said the kidnapped students mostly include girls. The attack took place at a federal government college in the remote town in the northwestern state of Kebbi. It is the third assault by armed gangs on a school or college in Nigeria in less than a month. A spokesman for the police said a student was also shot and is receiving medical treatment. Authorities say security forces are searching a nearby forest for the abducted students and teachers. More than 700 children and students have already been kidnapped by different gangs for ransom since December. In Honduras, 5 inmates have been killed in a brawl at a high-security prison east of the capital, Tegucigalpa. Authorities say 39 inmates and guards were injured during the clash, which involved the use of live ammunition and grenade. Prosecutor Sara Gomez said 13 people are in critical condition. The brawl began when members of the Barrio 18 gang entered a section for members of the rival Mara Salvatrucha 13 gang. According to the prison authorities, the facility houses more than 1,500 inmates. Prisons in Honduras have been under military control since the end of 2019. Landslides triggered by heavy rains have killed at least a dozen people in Bhutan and Nepal. Authorities say several others are missing. 10 people were killed in a landslide north of Bhutan's capital Thimphu. Bhutan's Prime Minister Lethai Tshering said a rescue team has been sent to the site. Over in Nepal, 2 Chinese workers died after being swept away by the overflowing Melamchi River. At least 70 people have been rescued so far, but efforts have been hampered by telecommunication failures. Torrential rains have lashed Mexico's southern city of Bhutan in Oaxaca, causing a river to overflow. Streets turned to rivers, and authorities say about 1,000 homes are flooded. As floodwaters slowly recede, local authorities and residents are coming together to clean up streets. They are trying to stop the spread of disease in the small city. Residents are bracing for further floods, with heavy rain predicted to go on until next week. Most markets in the Asia-Pacific are trading higher. Investors are monitoring moves in the commodities space after prices fell sharply on Thursday. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index is leading the gains, rising close to 1%. Australia's ASX 200 and Seoul's Kospi have edged up marginally, while stocks in mainland China have also gained fractionally. However, the Nikkei 225 in Japan has edged lower. Now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.